Hey everyone, welcome to the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I am your host, Joel Carrera. Today we have an amazing guest, Rob from Brigger Care. Here to speak to us about behavioral therapy and working with patients and what interesting twist to talk about how AI is impacting um, that whole field and what they're doing here about that. Obviously, in addition to talking about the entrepreneurial journey and uh, growing as a leader within a small business and navigating the a team, right? Just all of those. Rob, thank you so much for uh, being on the show. If you wouldn't mind to introducing yourself and giving us a perspective of who you are and what you do.
Sure, the 2-minute bio. Well, it's great to be here, Joel. I appreciate you having me on. I'm a retired physician, and subsequent to retirement, we, through a rather unusual path, which entrepreneurs will understand, we ended up in the world of intellectual and developmental delay. For a short period of time, we had a residence and we were caring for individuals with intellectual and developmental delay. Because of my medical background, we were taking very high-tier, medically fragile individuals. And frankly, it's very, very difficult to find staff to help care for somebody with those kinds of issues, in addition to dealing with the concerns that come along with developmental delay. And so we ended up having to close because of staffing issues. But along the way, we had been working with behavior professionals, which is a rather new industry. They're people who are primarily psychologists, although there are some educators and some social workers who also do this. They perform an analysis of the individual with intellectual and developmental delay, and they're looking at the behaviors that result from this individual trying to navigate the world that they see around them. And many of those behaviors can be quite challenging, both for the individual themselves and for those around them. Things like emotional escalation and that sudden change in mood. Some can use violence. Some have poor sexual boundaries. Some have difficulties with anxiety or maintaining a role in the community. Behavior professionals are the people who come in, perform those analyses, and then write a support plan that tells the caregivers how to work with this individual so that their life can be as happy as possible. That's the outcome that we're shooting for. Because of my rather extensive background in medicine, and I had done a fair amount of psychiatric kind of work, I did qualify as a behavior professional, and I started doing this on my own about 3.5 years ago. It became clear that the industry was dominated by very small operations. An individual or a couple of people might provide these services. My wife and I looked at this, and having been in medicine, we thought, well, there's a lot of structural procedure that needs to be done in order to provide the service, the same as there is in medicine. And so we really designed our group very much like a medical practice. We have a back office. We have people that do our intake. And then we hire the professionals, and the professionals just do their job. They don't have to do all of the additional work for Medicaid authorization and billing and collections and all those things. So very much like a doctor's office. The physician is there to do their job, and we really work behind the scenes to support our behavior professionals. We are now up to 16 behavior professionals in the group, all of whom are highly qualified and do a very good job. We have used digital technology to enhance the procedures and operations that we have. We, in fact, just recently have deployed a brand new database that has improved our back-end operations. And we are fully committed to utilization of digital technology to improve our efficiency as much as possible. And you did briefly mention in the introduction that artificial intelligence is definitely of interest. It's going to change everything. I don't think there's an industry that isn't going to be affected by this. And to think that our industry, behavior support planning for individuals with developmental delay, isn't going to experience that same, I think, radical change over the next 3 to 5 years with use of AI. So we're at that interesting point now. So that's where we are as entrepreneurs. That's where I am. Is I've got an industry that's growing. We topped $1 million last year in our third year. We still have on a run rate now. We're at about 1.4 million based upon recent 3-month revenues. Hopefully, we'll top 2 million this year. We've got another state that we've added. We've got another division that we've added. So we're maybe doubling or tripling our business this year. But as proof of our commitment, we have me moving full-time into IT development and another full-timer within a group of 18 people. We have 2 people working full-time in the IT area now. So that's who we are.
Large team. I touched on so many topics right now, but let me stick to one. First major topic. I'm just fascinated about right now the AI part, right? So, are you currently feeling the effects of it right now, or not so much, or is it more of just like more anticipation more than anything? And if so, what are the current ideas, especially in you're working in a very niche business, dealing with a very niche population that has strong cognitive issues. How do you envision AI participating in the people that you serve and in your business, within the next 3 years? Like, what are you working towards, I guess?
So there are a couple of ways to view this. First of all, that we are dealing with human beings, and so there are significant legislative boundaries upon the use of AI, and those aren't going to go away. First and foremost, we have to make sure of privacy. So we can't have a platform in AI that's gathering individualized data. So we can't have, for instance, a platform in which we have everybody that's ever been referred to us with developmental delay, and their names and their personal information is all available without there being very significant protections. That's not nearly so much the case if you're gathering people who like to drink coffee and you know what their favorite coffee drink is. That's not nearly so personal. So we do have to be very mindful of the privacy issues that surround AI, and there are legitimate concerns about what are those guardrails, what are those barriers to dissemination of that information. Secondary, we have legislative concerns because we have to meet the requirements of Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, the federal entity that provides the funds. The vast majority of the individuals we work with have Medicaid services, and we bill Medicaid. So we have to ensure that we are very compliant with CMS guidelines. How that interacts with what we're doing with AI is not really clear yet. There's going to be a lot of interaction between us and regulatory agencies with regard to making sure that we are compliant with CMS guidelines. I can tell you that Medicaid fraud or the perception misuse of Medicaid funds results in prison time. This is very serious. So we are very aware of that boundary. But there are positives to AI. The amount of information that is available in the world is just staggering, and no one human being can know all of this. And yet an AI can be a very efficient scraper of that data and can integrate it into an evaluated process. And so the Uber professional could input into the AI the features that have been discovered with respect to this individual's condition, behaviors, motivations, interviews with caregivers, interviews with parents and with schools. And all of that can be combined with this massive amount of information that is available in the world and can then be presented back to the behavior professional in a way that is really, it's going to be 100% up to date. So I view AI for us like the behavior professional having a research assistant on steroids right next to them so that they can use that tool to discover all of these strategies, all of the psychology that may be involved in developing a plan and still use their own judgment, because the behavior professionals are still having one-on-one contact with the individual that they're working with. So I don't view AI as replacing the behavior professional, but really as being that person sitting next to you, that research assistant sitting next to you, that is smarter, faster, and more knowledgeable than any human could ever be. And that's where I see the strength. We are being very open in the meantime, however, to any restrictions that there might be on this, because again, we're dealing with human beings. We can rely on experience in healthcare. AI has been in healthcare longer than I think anywhere else. And so we do have some historical experiences that regulatory agencies will probably rely on. And as a physician, I'm sort of aware of where those restrictions might be. So we've got, on one hand, a regulatory framework that we have to be very cautious about, and on the other hand, a tremendous opportunity for behavior professionals to have wide-ranging availability of data and new theories and tracking of outcomes so that we know what works and what doesn't. All very exciting stuff. That's the problem we're facing, which is why we now have two of us working on it full time.
I'm curious because, I mean, I was watching a keynote presentation by the CEO of NVIDIA like 2 days ago, something like that. And he was mentioning how like the newer versions of GPT are going to involve a lot of encryption, pretty much. So things like personal information and things of that nature are going to be able to kind of be segregated, processed, without necessarily leaking identity. I mean, obviously that's always going to be a tricky thing with technology. But I'm curious. I don't know. Is it mainly an identity thing? You know, like I know HIPAA is a huge thing, right? Like across any regulatory issues. But like, what if it was the case where I don't know, everybody got like a certain code, and that way the data is able to get congregated, evaluated, and outputted in a way that's separate from the confidential information that's linked to that code. You got what I'm saying?
I know what you mean, and this was a problem that was faced early in the days of technology when it was introduced into healthcare. Is how do you de-identify the relevant data so that if somebody else, a bad actor, for instance, were to obtain that data, they would not be able to identify the individual that data is associated with. And the good news is that because medicine did this before anybody else, there are structures and strategies in place to de-identify data. So we certainly are looking at that in terms of our process. If we were to put in our own outcomes data, we would have to de-identify that very clearly. We're going to be looking to regulatory guidance with that, but it's within HIPAA already. So there is the opportunity for a lawyer, right? So we're not going to do this without legal consultation. And to say, how do we de-identify so that we meet the bounds of HIPAA? For people who are listening who don't know what HIPAA is, so it's huge regulatory statute. It's a massive statute. Most people know it for its privacy concerns. So we are bound by HIPAA because we are dealing with personalized health information. Your status as indicted as developmentally delayed is health information. And so there are mechanisms out there that we will have to use, but we don't have to develop them ourselves. fortunately.
Okay. Well, maybe we could pivot from the high level technology
Mhm.
conversation more into the maybe even like founding story here. I know you have a medical background already. Like, what inspired the pivot into working with this population, and how did that journey look like? Starting a business like this from scratch, and what were some of the
Sure.
struggle lessons? Yeah.
Well, like many entrepreneurs, you can end up in some place inadvertently, right? You just are always waiting for an opportunity. And I had in medicine, I had started several businesses. I was one of the first people in Oregon to have a telepsychiatry practice. So I had done that. I had started several practices that were highly focused. Had a nursing home practice, had a corrections practice, actually. We had correctional facilities that we managed medical care. And so I was used to the idea of being aware about opportunities. Then when I retired, I worked for a metabolic coaching company. They did online metabolic coaching for diabetics, and I was their sort of medical clinical oversight person. I'm not so sure that the company did very well. I don't know what their status is now, but I met a young person who said he knew how to do this. And I said, well, I've got a rental house that's available, and I'm not going to be here, and you want to leave? Let's do this together. So that's the reason that we started a home for individuals with developmental delay, was because I met somebody who said he knew the industry really well, and I had the resources. And my intent was to be in the background, to provide the home, to provide the business structure, perhaps, but to let him run the home. Sadly, that partnership didn't work very well. So I ended up having to run the home too, which then taught me when you've got money on the line and it's your money, you learn very quickly, right? You put your time in. So that's where I was. I learned about this industry very, very quickly. And then when I transitioned then into being a behavior professional, it was very short term afterwards that we decided this looked like a clinical practice, which was something we now had experience with. And so the comfort level was much greater. We immediately went into, did all of the things that we had done for prior practices. We knew about, how to set up banking arrangements and how to bill Medicaid and how to do sub-assignment of contracts. All of that was within our experience group. So it was just really, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. We were very prepared. The opportunity presented itself, and we immediately jumped in. And we jumped in with just a couple of behavior professionals. And then my wife, very good at marketing. She got our name out there very quickly. It didn't take us long to start off in the black, and we've remained so. We have money in the bank, we have no debt, and we have positive cash flow. So we've just simply grown by adding services and by increasing our efficiency to maintain our margins.
And what do you envision Brigger Care being? Like, what are your goals with the company? Where do you want to see it? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see us be much, much bigger. To be honest, there are efficiencies with scale, and I believe that we are still at the inefficient end of that scale. There's a point at which the company gets too big, you'll get inefficiencies again. But I think we're way on that end of the efficiency curve that we could be better with more states. We just moved into Washington. We've added a different division within the Oregon state government that provides care to acquired injuries, like things like head injuries and dementia. We're going to be working in that realm fairly soon. And we're looking at other states, primarily parsing them out by the regulatory confusion that exists within those states. Moving into California, really, really hard. Moving into New York is really hard. We're finding some other states, and I won't say which ones, that their regulatory structure is simply easier for us. So we're going to, I hate the cliche phrase, pick the low-hanging fruit, but that everybody understands that. And I would like to be, by the end of this year, I would like us to be active in at least 3 more states. That would get us into, we would then be in 5 states. And then I think we'd be ready for investor money. It is all about growth. Yes. You're either growing or dying.
Well, what about as a leader? What has been some of your main challenges and main lessons that you've learned along the years, and maybe there's certain challenges you're still experiencing now that what how's that how has that journey looked like for you as a leader?
Yeah, when we started this, I was definitely in the driver's seat. With time, entrepreneurs sometimes have a hard time giving up the responsibilities. I mean, they feel like only they can do the job, and they end up wearing every hat. And I was very willing to give that up. My wife actually runs the company. She is the person who says, "This is the direction we're heading. We're gonna spend the money to expand here, or we're going to hire 3 new people at this time." She is the one who makes those decisions. I am the one who makes things happen. Right? I'm the one that says okay, if we're gonna do this, let's do it this way. So I'm the boots on the ground. She says that she says I'm the brains and she's the brawn, is what she says. And it's not really true, but that's the way she puts it. We have been fortunate in that we have found 2 other people who work with us very closely and are part of our administrative team, who are exceptionally good at what they do. We brought somebody from the medical billing world with us. We found her again, and she now handles all our Medicaid compliance. She does, she actually knows a lot of the regulatory stuff that is important to us. And then we were very fortunate to add Amanda as our clinical director, who's a 15-year experienced 2 master's degree level psychologist who knows this industry backwards and forwards. And so I've been very happy to give up the clinical directorship role to her and to move into really development and IT. The lesson here is that as you grow as a small business, your tasks will become smaller. You cannot do it all. You cannot be the accountant and the IT person and the clinical director and the head of expansion all at the same time. You just can't do it. So you have to be humble enough to say, this is more than I can take care of. And for me in the leadership role, it's kind of fun that I get to pick the thing that I want to do. And I'm really fascinated with the IT world. So that's what I've done. That's what I do now. I work on efficiency, and I have allowed others to take over the other roles that they're better at. Everybody who does what they do in this company is better at what they do than I was doing it. Humility's a hard lesson for some entrepreneurs, I think.
And just out of curiosity, what would you say for even like somebody who's in the beginning phases of building their business, right? And trying to attract that team, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a challenge. We were lucky in that we were able to filter because we had many people to choose from for clinical director, and so we chose the person that with I think at the time we used we went with Amanda. I think that we had 11 behavior professionals, and so she clearly was the one who fit that role the best. When you're starting off brand new and it's just you, your first hire is so important because it's the biggest expansion you will ever make in your business. You've expanded yourself by 100%. You'll never do that with your employees again. You'll never double the number of employees again. So that first hire is really important. I think it's absolutely crucial that you define the roles that person is going to fulfill for you, and then you let them do it and you step away and concentrate on the next step. Don't go back. You can always hire somebody else. Everybody makes mistakes. The path to entrepreneurship is strewn with rocks and pitfalls, isn't it? For all of us. But you've got to relinquish that control to people who know what they're doing. When our billing person came on, she simply knows so much more about it than I do. It's a joy to have her on board. So for that early person, you're going to want somebody with a fairly broad range of skills, but you want somebody for whom that array of skills complements yours and doesn't mimic yours. So the same person as you. You want the Steve Jobs Wozniak approach, right? Wozniak was the programmer and the tech guy. Jobs was the visionary and the marketer. You want complementary skills. So a good exercise might be to write down what you do best and what you do worst, and then find somebody whose skill set is exactly complementary to yours. Don't be scared to spend the money either. If you've got the money and you can live on less and you can pay somebody else well, do that. It'll pay off in the long run.
Makes sense. Curious, a lot of entrepreneurs, they deal with this issue of, especially when the business is growing and they get into that seven-figure mark, of being overwhelmed, right, with work. Not everyone gets the people equation figured out, right? Being able to effectively let go of the different hats and things of that nature. But how has your journey been with that? Like, like some entrepreneurs, they get to the point where they can't even take a few days off, right? Like, because if not, they feel like their business is going to crumble. But I don't know what kind of words of wisdom do you have or experience, with that, right? Or I'm not, and I know that you're pretty much heading into a new phase right now within the business of early growth in different states, right? Maybe you're experiencing that again in some way, or probably maybe we'll encounter that into the future. I don't know, but yeah, just kind of talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, getting away. The great part about being an employee is that you get time off, right? You get to go away, and then you come back, and your job is still there for you. And when you're an entrepreneur, for many of us, you can't really take a vacation. You've got to answer your emails every day, even when you're sitting on the beach in Mexico, right? So we experienced that with our last vacation. My wife was unable to get away from the daily grind of having to answer emails. And I think, to be honest, during the early phase of entrepreneurship, if that's not a commitment that you're willing to make, you're probably not cut out to be an entrepreneur. That is going to be part of your life, that your business is going to dominate your life until you're big enough to have a hierarchical structure that can step in for you. And we are not there yet. We're still a tiny little business. We are still a mom and pop shop. And we do not have people that we can say, here, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. We just take care of everything. We are to the point where we can go for a day or two. We could take a day off. That's not a problem. We take 2 days off. We can't go for a week. So it is unfortunately part and parcel of the entrepreneur's lot in life that during the startup phase, if you're thinking about vacations during the startup phase, you're probably not going to succeed, because that can't be first and foremost. You do need to take care of yourself, however. You do need to take care of yourself, don't you? If you can't take a vacation, well, what does that mean? Well, it does mean at the end of the day, we do put our work aside. When we're done, we're done. And then we make sure that the other parts of our life are still valuable. I exercise a lot. When we were talking just before the show, you asked me about my music interests, and we chatted about that. We have friends that we see regularly. We are able to put it aside. You've got to maintain that, but recognize that tomorrow you're still going back to work. But you don't need to work in midnight. You're not going to survive if you do that either. You got to find that happy medium, don't you?
Like a post by this, I think his name is Dan Cole.
Hmm.
It spoke about like having too much structure makes a mundane life, and having
Hmm.
I'm totally gonna butcher this, but
Uh,
and then having like too much spontaneity causes chaos, right? And life is about finding like that happy medium, where
it is. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly my point. Is that you dedicate your time to your business, but for your mental health, you also dedicate a portion of your time to yourself, and that's not greed. It's not selfishness. And in fact, I don't think your business is going to succeed if you don't do that. You got the occasional crazy person like Steve Jobs who doesn't do anything else. It's hard to compete with those people. The vast majority of human beings aren't like that. So you need to, yeah, go get together with your friends and play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is that you do that trips your trigger. You got to be able to do that.
Dungeons and Dragons. I'm
I'm not a D&D guy. I'm not a D&D guy. I have no idea where that came from. So,
I've been invited to play that one time, I don't know, and I'm still down. Like if I get the opportunity, to play that one time, hey, I could say like I've played it one time.
there you go. I think there's a lot to it. I don't know that playing it once. It's like playing tennis once. I don't think you really get the joy
You're
out of it.
right,
I don't
because
know.
it's like
But
ever going kind of thing.
yes,
Yeah,
it's
that's it.
absolutely.
Well, I mean, Rob, anything else maybe you would like to share with the audience, or maybe talk about where people could find you, things of that nature? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that my early experiences might be important, and that is that phrase that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I think that is so important. We hear so many people. We have friends who say they want to go into business and they want to do the thing they want to do, right? The thing they're interested in, and I think that's generally not the best strategy. We've had friends who have wanted to do they're particularly interested in a sport, particularly interested in cooking, and then they want to open a restaurant or they want to open a sports store. Running a business is nothing like your hobby. If you're doing something as a hobby, do that as a hobby. First, and the second thing is if you do that as a job, it will ruin your enjoyment of the hobby anyway. So don't do the thing you think you want to do. Do the thing where an honest evaluation of your skills is married with an honest evaluation of the opportunities that are around you. And do those things that you are good at. So for me, I'm not everything as an entrepreneur. I am not everything. I'm not great with money, to be honest. I don't like tracking money very well. My wife, fortunately, is very good at that. But be honest about the skills that you have and match those to opportunities in the environment. Everybody, by the time you're an adult, by the time you've done, at 10 years in the workplace, you have a unique set of skills. And sometimes they're things you don't think about. Just the ability to write. Perhaps that's not part of your job per se, but you have developed tremendously good communication skills. There is a skill that you can now start to bring to a marketplace and say, where does that skill fit? And who knows? You might end up running a plumbing supply company. Who knows? It might be nothing to do with anything you've ever done, but that industry needed what you have. And your vision for how you think business should be run dovetails with what that industry needed. Running a business in and of itself is different than the subject of the business. So I think that we could walk out here right now and take over a different kind of business and understand more about it than somebody who is enthusiastic about it. I can run a plumbing supply company better than a plumber could because I understand data flow, I understand money, I understand marketing, I understand the need to follow regulation. Right? So take your skill set and apply it to where it's needed. Don't do the thing you think you love. Very few people succeed. You get some people that succeed doing that, but they're lucky. They're just very lucky. So that's my advice, is be honest and look for opportunities that match your skills.
Words of some gems like this. Words of wisdom. Well, where could everyone find you on? And yeah.
Well, we have a website, obviously, briggercare.com. It's primarily a work website. It's for referrals. We will be moving forward with social media presence. Because our market is so focused and we work primarily with government referral agencies, we have not had to use that kind of avenue yet, but we will be moving forward with becoming more visible on social media. I think that's the thing to say. I'm old enough that I really have very little fondness for social media. We'll probably hire some 27-year-old who knows all about it. Again, another skill set that somebody could have simply from having been interested in social media and had their own, Instagram, TikTok channel. It's a skill you can bring forward and use for a big company. Right? So we will be out there, but we have briggercare.com for anybody that's interested. You can certainly check us out there. And the usual LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn. We're not on Facebook.
Right. I've experienced some right there at the end. This was very fruitful and very interesting, honestly, all around. Especially with the AI conversation and just your lessons in the entrepreneurial journey. I really appreciate your time. I think good vibes, good person here. Uh, Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to packaging up the content and so you can share, with your audience. Even if they're government workers or stuff like that. Who knows what comes out of it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much again.
It was great. Yep. Great being here, Joel. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and who knows, perhaps we'll cross paths again.
Yes, and thank you everyone for tuning into the Seven Figure Journey. And take care.